I'm going to go through and review some of the data sets that I've put together for you to use. You can consider them when we think about final project ideas. I've done the data carpentry, all the dull, boring work, to get these into a usable format, which is a skill that you may wish to acquire now, or you might wish you gotten it later, but certainly if you're going to be working in the field, you're going to face it. People employed in data science fields report they spend around 80% of their time just cleaning data, just housekeeping. It's a useful talent that you've got to have in your toolkit. So I'm going to share a bit of background about what I've done to prepare the files, which is not to downplay the huge work done by the government agencies that collect them and prepare the data. They do excellent work to create data sets cleaner than you'll find anywhere else. I've shared American time use survey data from IPUMS. You sometimes come across data shared in this way as fixed width. Literally, the first line is 2003010001. It's a relic from the time when computer memory was so expensive it was not worth even putting a comma or something to separate variables. I mean, you could guess that maybe 2003 is the year and there should be a comma after that, but who knows after that. Computer memory used to be so expensive, they didn't even want to use that comma. They'd have a companion file that decodes. So maybe the first 4 digits give the year, the next 3 some other item, so forth, whatever. R has a command, read FWF, which reads the fixed width file, but you have to tell it the width of each entry. You got to be super obsessive about all the widths, because if you get anything wrong, then all the data goes down. You want to carefully check the summary stats, be paranoid, and assume that it was loaded wrong until you're satisfied you can indeed reject that null hypothesis. Because, the null hypothesis is usually, oh, I'm an idiot, and something went wrong, there's some typo somewhere. And again, it's generally true. You have to consider the hypothesis that you did something wrong in loading the data, or somebody else did it wrong. At some point in time, the formatting changed, just somebody was on vacation or whatever. Somebody else made an update and it broke your pipe. It happens all the time. That's part of the joy of data work. It's not hard in any grand sense. It's just you got to be really finicky and careful. These ATUS files give detailed information about how people spend their time in 10-minute intervals, collected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Other countries have similar data. You can look at how much time people spend with family members, with their spouse, how much time sleeping, watching TV, doing chores, working, volunteering, much more. The coding system is quite logical, but quite complicated. The first 2 digits give the general classification, so T05 is time doing things related to work. T050101 supplements with more digits, so that's time at your job. T050102 is time working at your other job, for those who have a side hustle. T050103 is security procedures related to work, all the way down to T050189, which is working not elsewhere classified, NEC. Generally, the 9 codes refer to NEC, not elsewhere classified. Additional codes report spent time doing work-related stuff, like if you have to take a client to dinner or go golfing with a client. Then it goes to income-generating hobbies, which are, not exactly a job, but maybe some money coming in. It's job-ish. There's time spent doing interviews for a job, looking for work. Those are exhaustively classified. You can read the code book. The New York Times did a cool graphic a while back showing a typical person likely doing at different times of the day. That big gray area at the bottom, sleeping. Time of day is 24-hour scale on the horizontal axis. Of course, it wraps around. That big brown area there is TV viewing. The orange is work. Blue is eating. You can definitely see a well-defined lunch hour, while the evening meal has a broader range of times. You can look at things like the income effects on time use. There are lots of fun questions to consider. Another fun data is CEX, Consumer Expenditure Survey. I Gave you the 2023 data, gives detailed expenditure by household, plus occupation, industry, income, and then expenditures in broad categories. Food, food away from home, housing, utilities, childcare, clothing, healthcare, other insurance, entertainment, pets, much, much more. The National Health Interview Survey, NHIS, has lots of good micro data on both person and household and their health status, their health insurance. Those are tangled up and complicated. There are lots of government programs. Many people get insurance through their job. It's important for policy. There's the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, BRFSS, detailed microdata on the person and household and data on various risky behaviors, such as smoking, drinking, poor eating habits, getting a flu shot, disaster preparedness, whether they wear a seatbelt, all sorts of things about how people change their behavior in response to various sorts of risks, which is a big topic in economics. To what extent do people make rational decisions about risk? We've already used the Current Population Survey and the American Community Survey. The CPS is a monthly interview that's a basis for how the Bureau of Labor Statistics calculates the unemployment rate, published each month. There's a March survey where they spend a lot of time getting all the details from people, and then the other month's just to check in, ask questions like, are you still working? Researchers often use the March surveys for the demographic detail. The American Community Survey is done by the Census Bureau. They try to sweep every community at least once every 5 years, in addition to the big census that's done every 10 years. Now, generally, surveys are going to be weighted. We skip that in the class for now, but I want you to be aware of it for later. The weighting is important because when the survey is constructed, they'll sample groups unequally. An example, the Fed Survey of Consumer Finances, SCF. In the population overall, face it, most people do not have very much money. But a few, very few people, have lots and lots and lots of money. If I want to understand what do people do with their money and how do they invest, then I've got an issue. Rich people do a lot of different things with their money because they have a lot of money to do things with. Whereas a lot of poor folk don't even have a bank account. If I could sample only 10 people, then it might make sense to talk with like 8 rich people, maybe 1 middle-class person and 1 poor person. That'd be one way of getting a sense of what folks do with their money. But that doesn't mean that 80% of the population is rich. It just means that I wanted to talk with 8 people that actually have a lot of money to do stuff with. Figure out what are they doing with their money. In that sample of 10, that 1 poor person that I check in with would be weighted as if they're representing tens of millions of similar Americans. The rich folk would get a lower weight because each one represents many fewer people. The Fed Survey of Consumer Finances has extreme weighting issues, but every other survey does that as well. For this class, I think the costs are greater than benefits working through those details. But if you're looking at another data set and you see something called weight, then in most cases that's their statistical weight. They didn't have somebody how much they weigh. Unless something like the National Health Interview Survey, which might have 2 weight measures, and you need to be careful. One is the statistical weight, and the other is their weight in whatever kilos or pounds or something. There's a ton of data out there. Much of it available for free. Well, not really. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. But for the cost of your patient attention to getting it loaded correctly. You can, by taking pains, get your hands on all sorts of cool different data. As you read papers, you should look over the references, see how they got it.